off a week. And really, this week it should be Vayeshev. And we're not going to be talking about Vayeshev per se. But what we're going to be talking about is Chanuka. And this way I'll be able to make up for last week because it relates to Chanuka. And then maybe we can continue next week with Chanuka, and then we'll be on par where we belong. Okay? So we're talking about Chanuka. Many of the Kadmonim, the early Bali Kabbalah, the early the Farshei HaTorah, over 600 years ago, said that the Maisa Avos, Simin Labanim of Chanuka, is the story with Dina and Shem. Okay, it's very interesting, no? Dina and Shem, just like last week, we talked about the Maisa Avos, Simin Labanim of the Gulas, the Golus and Gulas Mitzrayim, and we said that has to do with Lavan. Now we're saying that the Maisa Avos Simin Labanim for the Golus Yavan and the Gula of Yavan, it was in Maisa Dina, from the story, the terrible story that took place with Dina and Shem, and we'll see slowly. So the Rambam writes like this. Babay Sheni, during the second Beis HaMikdash, Kishamalcha Yavan Gozu Gzeiros al Yisrael, that the empire, Greek empire, decreed made declarations against Klal Yisrael, which is nothing new. The whole world has always been making declarations about Klal Yisrael. Yeah, Babay Sheni Gozu, they decreed. Ubatlu datam, they nullified their religion. V'lo hinichu osam lasot b'Torah, and they did not allow them to study Torah, to be involved in the study of Torah. Uba mitzvahs, and fulfilling mitzvahs. Uposhtu yedeyem, and they took over the mamonam, their money, uvivnoiseyem, and their daughters. And we all know the story of Chanuka, and that's how the Chashmonaim went to the battle, but Yehudis was taken, and so on. Now, first of all, we don't find that the Yevonim, that the Greeks took our money. They did not make it, they didn't cause us to have to pay taxes, they had nothing to do with our money. So where did the Rambam get? They didn't do that. The Romans did it to Klal Yisrael horribly, but not the Greeks. So where did the Rambam get Pashtu Yodam? They intervened, or they took over their money and their daughters. What they did, really, when it says that, the Rambam says that they took over our money, or took control, if you want, of our money, what they meant is that they wanted us to use our money, our wealth, in tamei things, with things that are tamei, things that are nasty in the eyes of Hashem. Let's put it that way. And that's exactly what Shem did with Dina, because he was trying to convince his people it's a good idea to get close to these Jews. And what did he say? They're at peace with us. We'll take their daughters for wives. And we'll give them our girls. Miknehem, their herds of cattle, the kinyonim and everything that they own, v'chol behemtem and all their animals, halolonu heim, it'll be ours. They're animals. That's their money, their wealth. Our response was Shimon, and we went to war. And what did we do with Chanuka when they took over Yudis? They went to war. So it was the first time. This is interesting, that Klal Yisrael, the Shvatim, went to war. And they went to war with Shimon and Levi, and they went to save their sister and defend their property. Okay? And they took everything back. They took their property, actually. So on Chanuka, who was the ones that fought the battle was Levi, this tribe of Levi, who were the Kohanim, because it all came about with Matisyahu and Banov. Matisyahu and his son, Matisyahu was the Kohen Gadol and the Kohanim. And they went to war to oppose the Greeks. 13 people against the entire Greek army. Think of it. So we decide together and fight Russia together. Are we going to be able to do that, or America, Afghanistan, or anybody? We can't even succeed here. The world won't let us. The world won't let us. We could do it, but the world won't let us. All right. So Shimon should have joined them at the time of Hanukkah, because the battle of Hanukkah, and this is something that needs to be understood, the true battle was not the girls. I mean, it was the part of it, right? The tumah, but it's much deeper than that. What the Yevonim Greeks, when they came onto the world scene, it was such a revolution. It was the most, since Maimon has Sinai, there's nothing that was such an upheaval of the culture and the worldview of the world was Greece. And they instituted two things that they were absolutely well known for, and not only just well known for, that they were exemplary in it. They were the amazing foundation of all these two things. Number one, Chochmah. The Gemara says, Chochmah b'goyim tamin. If somebody tells you that there's wisdom among the nations, believe him. Torah b'goyim al tamin. Now, the Chochmah is what we know today. And it's to this very day, it's that Chochmah that Greece instituted. And that, of course, is secular wisdom and science, as we call it. Science. What is science? Science tells us that they want to discover and understand the mechanisms of the physical world. How it works, when it works, what it works, everything. They want to master the physical world, including health, including emotions, all the stuff that's human. They master. That's what science is all about. The only thing is they don't take in consideration that there's something outside of science, and there's something outside of the physicality, and there's something outside and beyond. And they said, and it's the Ramban, this is a Ramban, it's amazing, a Ramban in Parshas Achrimos says that the Yevoni, meaning Aristotle, who came along and taught with his students that anything they can't see, anything they can't touch, anything they can't smell, anything they can't hear, anything they can't prove with their brilliant minds doesn't exist. I can't prove it. I can't find. That's what science says. It just doesn't exist. I see something happening. I see a phenomenon, so I've got to understand the phenomenon because the phenomenon exists. But a phenomenon that we don't see, hear, smell, touch, know, doesn't exist. So that's nature. That's nature. It's all of it. All physicality. That's what we're saying. The physical world. Now, the physical world is a minuscule, a midget of what the Rebbeinu Shalom created. It's such a vast world of Ruchnius that is imbued into the physicality, but we'll leave that for the moment. So the first thing they come with Chochmah, and therefore, since they were the Chachamim, they opposed Torah. And what part of Torah? What part of Torah do you think they opposed? Not the written book. Even Charlie Kirk knows the Bible. They have the Bible. They translated the Bible, the Torah Shebiksav. So what is it that they oppose when they oppose Torah? Torah Shebal Peh. Now, what does that mean? That means like this. They translated the Torah. They have the Torah. Nothing wrong with that. You want to have a Torah. It's a very wise book. Yeah. Either we accept it. If I don't understand it, of course, it's not true. But if I understand it, whatever it is I understand, that is true. Of course, we'll accept that and so on. But what they did not accept was Torah Shebaal Peh. And what does that mean, Torah Shebaal Peh? Torah Shebaal Peh is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the ability to know what he meant in Torah Shebiksav. I always challenge people, name me one mitzvah as it's written in Torah Shebiksav that you could fulfill without Torah Shebaal Peh. One mitzvah, any mitzvah. You can't. There's no mitzvah. How about that one? That's pretty good, easy. Honor thy father and thy mother. And then it says, Ish imo v'aviv tira'u, yeah. And then he says, Makeh aviv v'imo. If you hit him, most you must. Now, let's translate that together. Translation is?
Honor your father.
Honor your father.
And mother.
And Makeh aviv v'imo.
One who strikes his father and mother.
Oh, so you got to line your mommy and daddy up and hit them both? Is that what it means? No, it means or. It means or. How do you know when does the the mean and when does it mean or? Maybe it means you have to honor either your mommy or your daddy. You don't have to do both. I mean, that's going a little bit extreme. Or it means you have to hit both of them in order to. Well, how do you know what to do? I remember when we were living the first time in Eretz Yisrael and Rabbi Fagan, and I was in Eshat Torah, and there were a lot of fresh guys that didn't really have any knowledge of what Shabbos was like, and guy comes over to me and he says, Rabbi, where are the facilities? And I told him, go down the hall, it's to the left. He comes back out. He says, Rabbi, can you flush the toilet on Shabbos? How do you know? How do you know what you can do? How do you know what you can't do? It's only Torah Shebaal Peh that formats our lives, our structure, our culture, our meaning in living, and what the Torah says. Of course, you can't have anything in Torah Shebaal Peh that isn't connected to Torah Shebiksav. But that's what they were opposed to. Don't you tell me what the words mean. I understand Hebrew. I know. We know. We got the brains. That was number one that they instituted, is wisdom. What's number one? What was number two?
Physicality.
Not quite. That's true. But that was true about the wisdom too. So, I mean, something else that's connected to physicality.
Worship of the body and
beauty. Beauty. And it really is beautiful. I mean, if you go to the Louvre and you see those, you go to the Louvre, you see those statues, you feel like tickling them because they're so alive. It's beyond. It's beyond. And that's all coming down from Greece. Now, so what does that mean, beauty? Well, of course, what is beauty? Beauty is symmetry. Symmetry in design. So it's very interesting. The Torah describes Yosef as Yefei Mare, Yefei Toar. Thank you. Yefei Toar, Yefei Mare. Now, what's the difference between Yefei Toar and Yefei Mare? Yefei Toar is that everything is designed with symmetry. All the features are in the right place. Everything it exactly fits together. That's what beauty. That's the beauty that they proportion, beauty, symmetry. It's all the same. And what's the Fei Mare? Says Rashi, Ziv Ha'or. It's a quality that is not part of the physical structure. It's a quality that comes from within and shines to the outside. Sometimes you meet people. I don't know what happens. You meet people. Unfortunately, they don't necessarily have the greatest symmetry, right, in their features, right? Too long of a nose, and ears too short, that kind of stuff. It's not what you're going to put up on the screen, right? No, won't go. It won't flow in Hollywood. That's for sure not. But you get to know the person. You don't see it anymore. Yes.
That's why I'm so opposed to pictures in Shidduchim.
Thank you very much. That's the only reason? You think that's the only reason? I mean, we went through that a long time ago, Baruch, not in that parsha anymore. But anyway, but it doesn't matter.
Is the fast mara the pain of the person?
It is Yefastar Mara is the Ziv, Rashi says. Now the Chain is not necessarily well, let's put it this way. The Chain affects the Ziv, or the Ziv creates the Chain. Let's put it that way. Yes.
Called radiance, really.
Right, radiance. It's something radiating. It's true. It's the Ziv. It's the light that comes from within. It's a light. And by the way, Torah, Ora, the Torah is light. But the Torah without Torah Sheba'al Peh is very, very dark. Very dark. You know what it is? It's the Bible. And if you read the Bible, it is very, very, very awful. Really. Chas v'sholom, you know what I'm saying. Without understanding what Torah Sheba'al, the Torah Sheba'al through the Torah Sheba'al Peh, can't.
We still thought it was a disaster that they translated it because we regarded.
Well, that's there, of course. There's no question about it, because they distorted it. They translated it and it was distorted, and that's true. But that doesn't mean. In fact, the Gemara calls it. It's a Tosfos that. That Echtov Rube Torasi Kizar Nechshavu. We will become strangers when they write down the Torah. And Baruch Hashem, they kept Torah Sheba'al Peh. When I'll explain to you something else, okay? This is about my granddaughter. She's, I don't know, how old is she, Tali? 16, 15, I don't know. She's asked me questions like I have to think. So it goes like this. She said, how come the story of Yehudis is not in Tanakh? What does that mean? Why? The Gemara asked the question, or it says it differently, but he asked the question. The Gemara says, Ma Esther, Ma Shachar, Sof Halayla, just like the morning star is the end of the night. Kach Esther Sof Hanisim. The end of miracles. Now let's, whoa, says the Gemara, 1 minute. Chanuka. There was any less of a miracle, 13 men against the entire Greek army? Any less of a miracle with the oil? It's a miracle. It's certainly a miracle, says Nitna Li Kosef. The only one we said that she was the end, she was the last one to appear in Tanakh. Why? Because in order to include something in Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Suvim, you need a Navi. And Nevuah ceased. Nevuah ceased at the end, at the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash. This was in the middle of the second Beis HaMikdash, Chanuka. So there was no Navi, no one to include it. When I say no one to include it, yeah, people could add whatever they wanted, but it was not coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nevuah comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when the Navi said this is what is supposed to be included, Esther was a Navi, Mordechai was a Navi, put it into Torah Shebechsav. So, where is it, the story? Almost nowhere. I say almost. In the Gemara on Shabbos, it's talking about oil. Talks about the oil. In Bama Madlikin, what oil do you like? So it tells us that they're Chanuka, 8 days, they didn't find the oil, this, that, and the other, and then they were Koveya, 8 days, blood, Hodos Lahalo. That's what the Gemara says. Now, wait a minute, that's the whole story of Chanuka? Because once they wrote down Torah Sheba'al Peh, They wrote down Torah Sheba'al Peh only because of a situation that without it, writing it down, we would not have it. So they wrote it down. It's called Eis Lasos Hashem Heferu Torasecha. They wrote it down. But how did they write it down? They didn't write it down like you write a book. They didn't write it down like a Shulchan Aruch. They didn't write it down with very organized. You can be talking about in the middle of Shabbos, you're talking about Rabbi Eliezer the Mila. You're talking about the laws of Mila. You can be talking, it's all over the place. Not only is it all over the place, but then you have a concept of in the Mishnah, Chasura Mechsura. Something's missing. Oh, you forgot it. That it's not written here, but it's written somewhere else. Therefore, it's to be included. No, that's all verbal. So even when they wrote it down, they wrote it down verbally. In other words, what I mean verbally, that which you require the verbal in order to understand what's going on here. You can't read the Gemara without somebody explaining to you what's going on, because it has to be verbal. Torah Sheba'al Peh. Even though when they were allowed to write Torah Sheba'al Peh, but it was an unfortunate situation. They wrote it down in such a way that it requires the Peh. But when it came to Chanuka, whose whole battle was over Torah Sheba'al Peh, that they even omitted altogether, just a slight hint to it. And you have Megillas Chashmonaim, you have other places that we know what took place. But it wasn't part of Torah Sheba'al Peh. It wasn't even included in the Gemara. So do you hear what I'm saying? What was their battle? Their whole battle was against Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Greeks could not tolerate. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. Oh, yeah. The Pasuk says, Al pi hadvarim ha'ele korati itchem bris. Al pi hadvarim ha'ele. So Chazal, what does that mean in Chumash? That the bris HaTorah between Hashem and Klal Yisrael is not the 5 books of Moses. It's the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Al pi hadvarim ha'ele korati itchem bris. That means that we're special, that we have a covenant, that we have a deal, that we have a unique relationship with the Borei Olam. That's what it means. And that unique relationship with the Borei Olam is only evident through Torah Sheba'al Peh. Al pi advarim ha'ele korati itchem bris. What does that mean? Comes along the Greeks and says, who the heck do you think you are? Who are you to say you're so special? Chosen people? Chosen for what? What we were chosen for. Yeah, we're the chosen people. But mister, you don't know what we were chosen for. And if you want to, you can be chosen for that too. That means you got to work hard. You got to serve. You got to subjugate yourself to the Borei Olam. Are you ready to do that? What Borei Olam? It doesn't exist. Rachmana litzlan. You see what I'm trying to get at? So the battle of Chanuka was the battle of Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's what we have to know. Now, they could not stand that we have any relationship with something that is outside of the physical world, the physicality, all of science. Let's do it that way. Now, on Chanuka, only Levi went to war. Why? Shimon should have gone because he is the champion of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Listen a minute. Who was the first child of Leah? Reuven. That's Al Pi Hariyah. Reuven, that's Torah Shebiksav. Who was the second child? Shimon. You have to have, for Torah Sheba'al Peh, you need Shmiya. That's the sense we use. We're mekabel through, in our, Hat Oznecha. It says, Ad Kan. Nevu, Neviim, Beruach HaKodesh. Till they were mevatel, till it stopped, till Hashem said, I'm not talking anymore. And then Ad Mikan Hola, Hat Oznecha. Bend your ear to hear the Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's an amazing thing. So Shimon was supposed to certainly be part of that, together with Levi, together with the Kohanim. But why wasn't he? Because what they were dealing with was the defilement of Dina. And Shimon and his entire tribe fell prey to the seduction of the Bnos Moab, and therefore he couldn't do it. When before that, he could fight the whole city of Shem together with Levi, because he had Tosha B'Alpeh, Tosha B'Sham together to smash him. But now Shimon couldn't do it because of what that Aveira, that he was still suffering from that Aveira. So, okay. Now, it says like this. I told you, no. Both victories, the victory of the battle with Shem and Kamor, that was a victory that was totally the Malam min HaTeva. How did two men fight the entire city and just wipe them all out? All the men, all the non-virgin women, everyone was wiped out. 2 men. How'd that happen? Same way that 13 men fought the entire Greek army. Both battles were Lamala min HaTeva because they gave over themselves for Yichud Yisrael Ba'amim. That their daughter, so Yaakov Avinu says to the brothers after they came back from the war and they wiped them out, Achartem osi. You made me ugly. To embarrass me. B'yoshev haaretz, b'knani u'b'prizi. All the Knanim came against them, and they were going to wipe them out. He says, "V'ani mesei mispor." And I'm only few in number. I'm going to be lost. I'm going to be destroyed. I'm going to be vanquished. That's what Yaakov says to the brothers. What was his concern? That he was going to be wiped out. What did the brothers say to him? Hakizona nasa achotena? Didn't seem to be the fitting answer. The fitting answer is, what do you mean? We'll fight. No, he says, Hakizona. We went to war because they were Metama Dina. Hashmonaim went to war because they were Metame Yehudis. Now to understand this, we have to understand who Dina was and what her role was in Klal Yisrael. Dina. See in a minute. Start out like this. Yaakov Avinu, his what he constructed was the base Yisrael. That's what he went for, to construct Klal Yisrael, the base Yisrael, bias. You know, when you look at a house, what's a house made up of? 4 walls and a roof, maybe a door, and if you're lucky, a window. Right? That's a house. That puts you into a house. Now, if you look in the corner, there are 4 corners, right? 4 walls, right? So there are 4 corners and a roof. Look in the corner there. There are 3 points that come together. 2 of them horizontal and 1 vertical. 3 points. 4 of them together. How many are there now? 12. That was base Yisrael. That's why there were 12 shortim, not 14, not 18, not 6, 12. Because we're building the base Yisrael. You hear that? And that required shvatim. And that's why they had 12 shvatim. Now, where's Dina in all this? She's not a shevet. What's her role? So each shevet, it was unique in the formation. Each part of Klal Yisrael. Each one was a child of Yaakov Avinu. And so was Dina. But she wasn't a shevet. Klal Yisrael is called Echad. Goy Echad Ba'oretz. What's the gematria of Echad? 13. What's the Aleph of Echad? Yaakov Avinu. What's the Ches of Echad? Is the 8 children of Leah and Rachel. And what's the Dalet? The four children of Zilpah and Bilhah. No, that's Klal Yisrael. Poor Dina. What does she do? What should she be doing? What's her role? Now, each Shevet it was a community. It wasn't just, it was a community that was structured in such a way that they became Echad. One. But every single Shevet was unique. It was Kohol. Each one had its own community, meaning they had their own qualities, their own mission, and you could identify them. Who was whom, and who was what, and where did they belong, and which one was part of this Shevet, which was part of that Shevet. You knew it, you could see it, it exuded from them. That's who they were. That was their identity. And not only that, not only the Shevet, but also the family, the Mishpachosam, the Veisavosam. The families within the Shevet, in the Kohol. But then there are certain people who are Jewish, not just Jewish, 100% Jewish, that don't belong to any Shevet. Because the Shevet is determined by whom?
Father.
The father. What determines the Yiddishkeit? The mother. Now, what's going on here? Gemara says that a man who has a child with a non-Jewish woman, the child's not Jewish. A woman who has a child from a non-Jewish man, the child is 1,000% Jewish. Okay? Says the Gemara, so interesting, that Avram Avinu sits at the gateway of Gehenna. I like that. He's a great welcome mat, right? People are going into Gehenna, and he doesn't let anyone that had a bris, he doesn't let into Gehenna. He protects them from the Gehenna. That's what Chazal say. How that works, I don't know, but that's what they say. But if somebody had relations with a non-Jewish woman, he doesn't recognize him. Doesn't recognize him because he broke the bris. His bris. His Avram Avinu's bris with Hashem, he broke it. And he married somebody who isn't Jewish. So what do we have here? We have a situation where the mother doesn't have to do a thing, a woman doesn't have to do a thing to become part of the bris. Men have to go through a little bit more. They have to do something. That's been something done to them to have them come into the bris of Avraham Avinu, not women. Why? Because they carry it with them. They're born with it. They are it. They're carrying it within themselves. And therefore, if they have a child, even though the father was not Jewish, the child is 100% Jewish. So isn't that what happened to Dina? That's what happened to Dina. Now, let's understand something even deeper than that. What about the people that don't belong to a tribe? That a father who wasn't Jewish cannot give that child who is Jewish a shevet. So where does he go? Who holds him? Who brings him in? Who is he a part of? Dina. The role of Dina in Klal Yisrael was to take all those who don't have kohol and bring them into the kohol, because she isn't in the kohol. She was not part of the structure of Beis Yisrael. Even Kahal Gerim, somebody's a ger, 100%. You have to love them, you have to hold them close, you have to give them they can participate in every area of Kedusha, but they don't have a shevet. Who is the one that includes them into Klal Yisrael? That's Dina. That's the Parsha of Dina and Chanuka. That's how it's all related, because that's what they wanted to do. As I'll say, it's amazing. On the pasuk like this, the Rambam writes, let's start this way. Botlu daitom. datam. They nullified their religion. Let's call it that. V'lo hinichu osam lasok b'Torah mitzvahs, and they let him be involved with Torah and mitzvahs. Very interesting here, just parenthetically. V'lo hinicham osam lasok b'Torah. Doesn't mean that they didn't let them read the Bible. It means they didn't let them learn Torah Shabbal Peh, because only Torah Shabbal Peh means you have to do it diligently and with complete commitment and a total involvement in it. It's the bracha we make on Birchas HaTorah. But then it says that they didn't let us learn Torah, that I hear, and they didn't let us do mitzvahs. No, so what's batul daitam? What is it? Dosam. What does it mean that they nullified their religion? If they didn't let him do mitzvahs and they didn't let him learn Torah, what's left? What's that included? So say Chazal and the Pasuk. V'oretz ha'yisa tohu v'avohu v'choshech al pnei tahom. Say Chazal in the Medrash. Tohu Bavel, Vo Parsamodai, Choshech Yavan, and Tahom. Tahom, you know how deep the Tahom is? How deep is the Tahom? You can't. There's no end to Tahom. Tahom. Back to Tohu, by the way. Tahom is back to Tohu. That's Rome. That's where we are. That's the fourth one. What was Yavan? Choshech. Darkness. Hechshichu einehem. And they made them take their property, the animals on the horns of their cattle, and write Ein lachem chelek Elokei Yisrael. You have no connection, no unique, no special connection to Elokei Yisrael. Amazing. What they wanted to do is what that's going on today. I mean, Rome was only merely the inheritors of Greece. I mean, Greece only lasted some 52 years. The whole Greek Empire was only lasted and all Alexander. Next week we'll talk a little bit about Alexander and so on, but right now we'll leave it, because then it's really Hanukkah, right? So now we're just preparing for Hanukkah. So this is so beyond when you realize that today, to this very day, we're suffering from what was taking place at the time of Hanukkah. She'ein lachem chelek b'Elokei Yisrael. Forget about it. What do you mean? We're all children of God. How sad. They forget. They forget that we have a unique the famous, I told you this, I'm sure, Agda Nash, it's English, huh? He said, how odd of God to choose the Jews. Not so odd. The Jews chose God. That's who we are. That's our uniqueness. So no hinichu lahem lasoik b'Torah u'b'mitzvahs. It's talking about Torah Shabbal Peh, and that kisu lachem al keren hashor, on your property, on your mammon, on what you own. Some say not only did you have to write it on the horns of the cows, you had to write it on the foreheads of the donkeys also. Write it. You don't care. You're nothing. Now, show you how far it went. There is in the construction of the Beis Hamikdash, they had a wall, a small little wall, not a very tall one. It's called the soreg, like sorigim, right? A soreg that protected around. What was the purpose of the soreg? That anyone who was not Jewish could not go beyond that point. Say Chazal, that the Greeks made 13, that's that 13 again, 13 pirzos. They broke that wall in 13 different places. When? Klal Yisrael, Hashmonoim, were victorious, and they came and they were mitaher the Tumah. They reconstructed those breaks in the wall and instituted a rule that any Jew that sees one of those pirzos that was reconstructed has to bow. B'pishut yodayim v'raglayim. Prostrate to yourself completely. Somebody that was circumventing the Beis Hamikdash had to do it 13 times. Can you imagine that? You see, there were a lot of people around the Beis Hamikdash when it was, and certainly in the second basement, the first basement. This is the second Beis Hamikdash that we're talking about. You saw people on laying down on the ground the whole time. I mean, there was always people that were prostrating themselves before these pirzas. Why? What's the big deal? So that brings us back to another point. In Neros Halalu, when we and even in Al Anisim also, we say that they came tiras miktoshecha, right, and they retire it. Vidliku neiritz b'chatzos kodshecha v'kavu shmoinas yemei Chanuka lahodos ulahalel. What's lahalel? Praise. To say praise. Where do we say praise? On Hanukkah, we say Hallel. 8 days worth. Full Hallel, 8 days. And where's the Hodos? How do you fulfill the Hodos? Thank you, Hashem. What is the Hodos? How can you fulfill the Hodos? So this I think I must have mentioned a number of times. How do you say thank you in Hebrew? Todah. Hodo. How do you say I admit? Same word. Same shorish. Why? Because every time you say thank you, what are you saying? I admit I couldn't do it by myself. I needed you to do it for me. There's an admission. Modeh b'miktsas. There's a concept in the Gemara that you admitted half. Modeh ani lefonecha. Shehechazarta, that. I'm being modeh that, not for, but that. When we say modeh al, that's thank you. We say modeh sheh, it's admission. I admit, to you, I am not in control. Only you are in control. Hold. Midah of hold. It says, well, we know what Gedula is, Chesed, and Gvura is Gibor, and Din, and Tiferes, and then Netzach, and then Hod. What's Netzach? What does the Natseach mean? We got it all over science, it's here and there. So the Natseach, victory, right? We're going to be victorious. We're going to be victorious over those who are opposed to us. How? Well, like we're doing, hopefully, with Siyata D'Shmaya. And then there's Hod. And Hod is a mission. And the other way we are victorious over our enemies is when they admit we are right. Welcome to anti-Semitism. You want to know what anti-Semitism is? I'll tell you with a sense that I was makabel for my rabbein. What they really hate is that we're right and they're wrong. And more so, they're wrong. Hodah, to admit. That's what we're waiting for. The Beis Hamikdash was the place where everyone knew and admitted that the Borei Olam was in control. We talked about this so many times in Ayin Gimel in Tehillim. Asaf, the Novi said, Kamat natoyu raglai, I almost went off the derech. Why? Because of Tzadik v'Ralo v'Rosh v'Tovlo. Ad. Only until Ovo el Mikdashei Hashem, I walked into the Beis HaMikdash. No more questions. When I walked into the Beis HaMikdash, I knew that's the place of Hod. That's where we admit that we are totally out of control. And it's only you. You have to say in Ashrei, we say, Koseach es yodecho mazbiah l'chol chai ratzon. The Sfardim go like this. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. You, Hashem, you provide everything. Poseach es yodecha. You open your hand. We're not telling him to do it. We're saying he does it. Who poseach? He opens his hands. Umazbiah, and satisfies kol chai ratzon. Everyone with their ratzon. Now, what does that mean? You don't see people going around dissatisfied. What are you talking about? I mean, well, how can you say that? And you're supposed to know it. And not only that, if you didn't say it with kavana, you have to repeat it from there. Answer to that question is the next pasuk. Tzadik Hashem b'chol derachav b'chol Hashem. There's no questions. Stop it with the questions. Why Hashem? Everybody, somebody asked me, why Hashem this and why? I say, I go tilt. I don't know why Hashem. Do you? I can't know why Hashem, because he's outside of me. It's not my seichel that can determine anything. What I think is right is usually wrong. What I think is left, I think is right. I mean, I don't know. I have to admit that. Where was the place that you admitted that? The Beis HaMikdash. And when you came into the Beis HaMikdash, you bowed. Where's the first time where we have bowing in Torah? By Avraham Avinu, where? By the Akedah. Where it says, Nishtachaveh v'nashuva aleichem. Where were they going? Where were they going? Beis HaMikdash. They were going to the Makom HaMikdash. Nishtachaveh v'nashuva aleichem. That Makom, that place, the Makom HaMikdash is the Makom of Ishtachavah. It's the Makom of giving up your control completely, even deeper than that. You know what our magnificence is? What's the magnificence of a human being? That we were created b'tzelem Elokim, correct? Right. Where? How do you know that you have a b'tzelem Elokim? Says the Maharal. There are two places that we know it. It's true, but it goes deeper than that. But you're right. But you'll see in a minute. We can communicate with speech. That's true. But that doesn't necessarily, that makes us different, but that doesn't necessarily indicate the Tzelem Elokim. What indicates the Tzelem Elokim is the Ziv Haponim, which also has to do with speech. But what's the Ziv Haponim? What do you call it? The radiance, right? Somebody said the radiance. Ziv Haponim. In other words, do you know any two people that look exactly alike? No such thing. I don't care if you're twins, triplets, quadruplets, septuplets. No one has your exact features because you're unique. You're Tzelem Elokim. That's the face. And the other is because we are vertical. We go min haaretz to shamayim. We always go vertical. Every other creature, including the gorillas, are horizontal. What does that mean? They're horizontal to the earth. That's where they are. And that's where they stay. And that's their essence. Man, human beings have a Tzelem Elokim. We move from bottom up. That's our goal. That's our mission. That's what we're here for. How do you say a bed in Lashon HaKodesh?
Mita.
Mita. What does the word mita mean besides bed? Why is it called a bed? Because pole?
Staff.
It's also a mate. Yes, why? Because the word lahatos means to divert. When you get into bed, you're horizontal. You know, many people go into horizontal hold, they hang in there. But it's your horizontal. You've deviated. You've taken, and a mata is a branch that deviates from the trunk of the tree.
But the Shvatim are also called Mata.
Right, because they came from the stem of the Yaakov Avinu. That was the whole point that we mentioned before. Exactly, they're matos. They're all, each and every one of them is unique, and yet carries with him the tzura of Yaakov Avinu. It's amazing. So now, when you come into the Beis HaMikdash, what do? You bow. Yishtachavah, chodah. When you bow, you're being modeh. You're admitting what? It's what can I say? What can I do? I'm in your control. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's Chanukah. That's the whole essence of Chanukah. L'hoidos u'lahalel. And how do we do that? We take a little lichtale and put it in the window. And that radiance, that aura of Toshma Peh and everything else that we've been talking about emanates from us out to the outside. Little lichtale in the window. That's all it takes. Or at the door. Here and there, so we can do it in the door, at the door. And in Chutz La'aretz, we had to do it in the window. That all started in Chutz La'aretz.
Yeah, what you said
About?
just now.
I said, we here in Eretz Yisrael, we like to live by the door, to be surrounded with mitzvahs, with the mezuzah on one side and the list on the other side. In Chutz La'aretz, because of the goyim, we used to light it on the inside of the house, in the window. You know, when we had a seminar when I was living in London, so we ended up, believe it or not, going to Turkey. And we had a seminar in Turkey. Yeah, you don't know about this one, I don't think. Do you remember about it? Yeah. With Terry. Remember Terry? Well, what a woman she was. She pushed the whole thing. Anyway, I came back. I mean, it doesn't really matter the whole story, but I came back for a follow-up over there and alone. Well, first I went with Sean Springer and Joey, but I went back alone for a follow-up. And I noticed something very strange. Because now I was in houses before we were in a hotel. That the mezuzah was not on the outside of the door. It was on the inside. Because of the goyim, which is happening now too in America. They're ripping off the mezuzahs. You see, this is what it is. And this is what our first of all, our bracha of being here in Eretz Yisrael, to be able to be mefarsein b'nes with that little light. It's not the big tarams. It's the little light that lights up the whole world. Doesn't take much. A little bit of ar removes all the choshech. So here we are with Dina, with the Battle of Chanuka and the role that she played. And that's the Maisa of us in the Labanim of Chanuka, because there's nothing that took place in the lives that the Torah reveals to us about the lives of the Avos HaKadoshim in Chumash Bereshis that doesn't have a reflection about and a portend to what's going to happen with Klal Yisrael in the future. That's where it's all. You want to know what's going to happen tomorrow? Forget about the newspapers. Forget about the whatever you call those things on the machines. But just remember, look in the Chumash and you'll see. Because there isn't anything in Chumash certainly in Bereshis, with the Maaseh Avos and Labanim, that defines for us, whether it's with Esav, whether it's Laban, whether it's with Dina, whatever. Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, the whole thing. Yaakov Avinu's funeral. So the Meforshim Rabbeinu B'chai, I think the Rishonim say the Maaseh Avos and Labanim is Klal Yisrael returning to Eretz Yisrael. All of it. And how do we return? How did Yaakov Avinu return? A dead body. That's how we got here. We were murdered and slaughtered and killed, and we returned. And nobody would believe that there was any chance that we would survive here in Eretz Yisrael. And here we are. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hu give us the strength to celebrate Chanukah with all the meaning and the hoyd v'hodar, the beauty that is the hoyd, which is the light itself, and the hodar, which means come back, to return, hadar, hodar, kushla, duchta, return, that the light should be reflexive back on each and every one of us, so that we can continue on and wait with fill your neinayim for the Gula Shleima of the Pei of your